Welcome back to Educator.com's English Grammar course. This lesson is about sentence types. Let's get started. All right, we're going to begin with an overview. We're going to ask, what is a sentence? We're going to find out what you absolutely need to have and what a sentence does. Then we're going to look at the four main types of sentences: simple, compound, complex, and compound complex. All right, what is a sentence? A sentence is a group of words containing both a subject and a predicate and expressing a complete thought. It's a self-contained idea. That's what a sentence is. The basic order for English sentences is subject, predicate, but we reverse that order for questions, there is or there are statements, and sentences that are inverted for effect. There are four common subject-predicate patterns. There's subject-linking-verb complement, which is covered in our lesson on linking verbs. There's subject-verb-object, covered in our lesson on objects. Subject-verb indirect object, direct object, also covered in our lesson on objects. And finally, the simple subject-verb. Now, a simple sentence contains one independent clause and no subordinate clauses. Now, you may be asking, what's an independent clause and what's a subordinate clause? Well, an independent clause contains both a subject and a verb, and it can, if necessary, stand on its own as a complete sentence. You could cut that clause out, stick it by itself, and it would be a perfectly valid sentence. A subordinate clause also contains a subject and a verb, but if you pulled it out and sat it by itself, it wouldn't make a lot of sense. It would be a fragment. It depends on the independent clause. It is subordinate to it. A simple sentence has only an independent clause. The subject and predicate may be single or compound, but the sentence contains only one subject-predicate pair. So, I must be true to myself. The subject is I, and the predicate is must be true to myself. Then I can be true to others. Again, the subject is I, and the predicate is can be true to others. Now, the compound sentence is a little bit more complicated. It contains two or more independent clauses, but still no subordinate clauses. The two independent clauses are connected by a coordinating conjunction, which we learned about in our lesson on conjunctions, or by a semicolon with or without a conjunctive adverb, which is also in the conjunctions lesson. So, we have a different form of our previous sentence. You must be true to yourself. There's our semicolon and our conjunctive adverb. Otherwise, you cannot be true to others. Now you notice these are both independent clauses. You must be true to yourself is a perfectly valid independent sentence, and you cannot be true to others is also a grammatical independent sentence. So when you put them together with a conjunction, you get a compound. Now we come to the complex sentence. A complex sentence contains one independent clause and one or more subordinate clauses. So the subordinate clauses have finally come in. Before you can be true to those you love, you must be true to yourself. Well, you must be true to yourself is an independent clause. As we saw on a previous slide, it stands alone as its own sentence. Before you can be true to those you love is a subordinate clause. It doesn't make sense by itself. You can't just walk up to someone on the street and say, before you can be true to those you love. Those you love is another subordinate clause. It has a subject, those and you, and a verb, love, but it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. You can't walk up to someone on the street and say, those you love, and have them expect to understand you. All right, here is the mother lode, the compound complex sentence. A compound complex sentence consists of two or more independent clauses, just like a compound sentence, and one or more subordinate clauses, just like a complex sentence. So, I know that if I am not true to myself, I cannot be true to others. Well, we established already that I cannot be true to others is an independent clause, as is I know that. You can walk up to someone and say, I know, it makes sense. It's independent, but if I am not true to myself is subordinate. Pretty much any clause beginning with if is subordinate because if is a subordinating conjunction. So this is a compound complex sentence. You've got your independent clauses squished together like in a compound sentence, but you've also got this subordinate clause making it complex. Compound complex. Let's look at a few examples. Take a look at these sentences and see if you can figure out what type they are. A stumble may prevent a fall. Deceive the rich and powerful if you will, but don't insult them. Speak the truth, but leave immediately after. Take a good look. Pause the video if you need extra time. And here we are. A stumble may prevent a fall. That's a simple sentence, and the way you can tell is it's got only one clause. One subject, one predicate. It's a single independent clause, so it must be a simple sentence. Now, deceive the rich and powerful if you will, but don't insult them. Well, we've got two independent clauses here. Deceive the rich and powerful and don't insult them. Those are both independent, which means that this has to be, at the very least, a compound sentence. But we also have the subordinate clause, if you will. Almost any time you see if, it's going to be at the beginning of a subordinate clause. So you've got two independent clauses and one subordinate clause, so it has to be compound complex. Speak the truth, but leave immediately after. Well, speak the truth is an imperative. It's got the subject you implied and the verb speak. It's an independent clause. It's a perfectly valid independent sentence, as is leave immediately after or afterward. So we have two independent clauses joined by the conjunction but, so this is a compound sentence. All right, we've got a few more proverbs here. Take a look at them. Absence makes the heart grow fonder. He who hesitates is lost. Never put off until tomorrow what you can do today. And silence is golden. See if you can figure this out. Pause the video if you need to. All right, absence makes the heart grow fonder is simple. It has the subject absence. Makes is the verb. It's a single independent clause. One subject, one predicate. It's simple. He who hesitates is lost. Well, he is our subject and is lost is our predicate, but this who hesitates is a subordinate clause. So we've got an independent clause and a subordinate, which makes this complex. Never put off until tomorrow what you can do today. All right, it's a command, so the subject is you. We've got put as our verb. Never put off until tomorrow, independent clause. But what you can do today is a subordinate clause. So we have one independent and one subordinate, so it's complex. And finally, silence is golden. Silence is our subject. Is our verb. Is golden is our predicate. One subject, one predicate, one independent clause. It's a simple sentence. All right, if at first you don't succeed, try again. Do as you will, but harm no one. A word to the wise is sufficient, and do unto others as you would have others do unto you. Take a good look. Pause the video if you need to. What kinds of sentences are these? And here we see, if at first you don't succeed, try again. Well, we have a command here. Try is our verb. You is our implied subject. And this is an independent clause. But if at first you don't succeed, there's that subordinating conjunction if, so we know that this is a subordinate clause, which means, since this is a sentence with one subordinate and one independent, it has to be complex. Do as you will, but harm no one. Do as you will and harm no one are both independent clauses. You could walk up to someone on the street and say, do as you will. You could walk up to someone on the street and say, harm no one. And they're joined by the coordinating conjunction but, which means this is a compound sentence. A word to the wise is sufficient. A word to the wise is our subject. Is our verb. Single subject, single predicate is sufficient. It's a simple sentence, an independent clause. And finally, do unto others as you would have others do unto you. Well, do unto others is an independent clause. And as you would have others do unto you is subordinate. And an independent clause there as well makes this a compound, complex sentence. That's all for this lesson. Thank you for watching. Educator.com.